The rain had that dense, winter weight that makes cities feel older. It hammered the iron gate of the hilltop mansion, broke into silver threads over the marble steps, and turned the street below into a ribbon of black glass. Above it all, behind hedges manicured with cruel precision, the house glowed warm, tall windows, chandeliers like constellations, while the world outside shivered. She stood there. Small. Thinner than a shadow. A cardigan 2 sizes too big swallowed her shoulders, the sleeves clung to her wrists like wet ropes. Mud climbed her knees. A plastic grocery bag, knotted twice, hung from one hand. The other balled into a fist against the gate, the metal cold enough to bite. She pressed the bell. Once. Twice. And then again, the way a heartbeat tries not to give up. Please, her voice got lost in the rain. Please, don't hurt us. From the far side of the gate, a red light blinked. A camera pivoted. Somewhere inside, a monitor flickered, and a bored guard lifted his gaze. You could almost hear him thinking, not tonight. Not in this weather. Not with the guests. The door on the portico opened. Music spilled out, piano, laughter, the kind that ripples when people know the wine is old and the secrets are older. A man in a dark suit stepped into the rain, umbrella snapping open like a bat. He moved with the surety of someone paid to say no. When he reached the gate, he tilted the umbrella, watching the girl the way you watch a stray dog that might bite. This is private property, he said, the words crisp as ice. Go home. The girl flinched, pulled the bag closer to her chest. We don't have. I mean, she swallowed, eyes blinking hard, trying to make the world stop swimming. I just need to see the owner. The man who lives here? The guard's expression didn't budge. There's no charity at this address. It's not, her breath hitched. I'm not asking for money. He glanced at her bare knees, at the shoes, the kind that used to light up with each step but were long past lighting anything. Then what? She bit her lip, fought the trembling that wanted to take her body like a storm takes a tree. I brought proof. She lifted the bag a little. The knot tightened, plastic crackling. It's for him. Who sent you? My mom. The words came out on a thread. She lifted her chin, as if putting a hand under it. Before she got sick. The guard's eyes flicked to the camera across the street and back. He'd done this 1,000 times, people who thought the gate was a confession booth, the porch a stage. And yet, there was something in the girl's voice. Not the usual panic, not the practiced tears. Something simpler, more dangerous, belief. From the house, a woman's laugh knifed the rain, then broke into applause. The guard shifted. The little red light on the camera blinked again. He spoke into the cuff of his sleeve, a low mutter the girl couldn't hear. A second later the intercom crackled, a voice inside asking if everything was handled. He said it would be. I'm going to call a car, he told the girl. They'll take you to a shelter. No, she shook her head, hard enough that wet strands of hair slapped her cheeks. No shelters. No cops. Please. Her eyes lifted past him, past the hedge, to a window where silhouettes moved like cutouts inside warm light. Just him. The guard started to say something, another no, the rulebook kind, when the bag slipped from her numb fingers. It hit the stone with a soft thud and toppled. The knot loosened. A little book slid out, edges worn, cover damp but not ruined. The guard stared down. It was a diary, pink once, now a tired gray, with stickers on the front, stars, crooked hearts, a wolf with glitter flaking off. Please don't let the rain take it, she breathed, dropping to her knees to scoop it up. It's my mom's, it's mine too, but hers first. She hugged it to her chest, the way you protect anything living. The umbrella tilted. For the first time, the man's voice softened. What's your name, kid? She hesitated, and in that little pause you could feel the weight of names, the ones that open doors and the ones that close them. Leah, she said finally, and it was true. She had decided it would be true. You said your mom sent you. The guard looked at the diary again. Where is she now? Leah's mouth moved, but the word never found her tongue. She stared at the gate post, at the brass plaque with the family name engraved like a verdict. Her fingers tightened around the diary until her knuckles went white. The guard exhaled, the sound like rain hitting stone. He pressed the intercom again, his voice lower, urgent without sounding it. There's a situation, he said. No, not like the others. A girl. She's asking for you by sight, not by name. Says she has proof. Silence pooled on the line. Inside, music swelled, laughter swirled, the polite storms of adults who wear masks for a living. Then the voice came back, clipped, bring her to the side entrance. And wipe her feet. We're not making a scene at the gate. The lock thunked. The gate groaned. Leah lurched as it opened, as if gravity itself had changed its mind. She stood but stayed small, the way you stand in a church you're not sure will accept you. The guard reached out, not touching her, but offering the umbrella like an awkward handshake. Stay close, he said. Don't talk to anyone unless they talk to you. She nodded and shuffled forward, shoes squeaking, socks heavy. The path curved through hedges that smelled sweet and mean at the same time. Up close the mansion wasn't a house, not really, but a statement carved in stone. As they rounded toward the side entrance, the music thinned, replaced by the hush of expensive things being careful not to break. A maid opened the door, already frowning at the wet prints Leah would leave. The guard gave her a look that made the frown disappear. They took her through a corridor of photographs, men shaking hands, ribbon cuttings, magazine covers with headlines that used words like visionary and empire. Leah's eyes caught on one frame and held. A younger man smiled at a camera he didn't fully like. Behind him, almost hidden by his shoulder, a woman with ocean-dark hair stared at something past the lens, one hand on a pendant at her throat. Leah stopped. Her breath made fog ghosts in the cold air of the hall. Her fingers rose, hesitant, to her own chest. She didn't own a pendant. But in that photo, the woman did. The same shape her mother had traced on nights when the power went out, whispering a name as if it were a lullaby and a warning at once. This way, the guard said, softer now, as if he'd seen the same pattern and didn't like it. They reached a small sitting room, all velvet and books no one touched. A fire played it looking alive. The guard gestured for Leah to wait. He stepped through an inner door, closing it with the care of someone sealing fate on the other side. Leah stood alone. Her clothes steamed. Her hands shook. She set the diary on the edge of a table as if it might misbehave. For a long moment she listened to the house breathe. The inner door opened. He filled the frame the way only certain men do, not with bulk, but with gravity. Age had done the predictable things to him, silver at the temples, lines where decisions had been, yet none of it dimmed the impression that he could change a street with a sentence. He looked at her the way a judge looks at a case, first at the facts you can see, then at the ones that try to hide. The guard started to speak, protocol, context, disclaimers, but the man lifted one hand, and silence fell like a curtain. He stepped into the room. Up close, his eyes were a color that stories used to talk about winter. Leah felt them land on the diary, stick, then come back to her face with a jolt so small you might have missed it if you weren't waiting your whole life for someone to flinch like that. "What did you bring me?" he asked. Leah swallowed. "The truth," she said, and heard how it sounded, in a room like this, to a man like that, and didn't take it back. He walked to the table, lifted the diary as if it might burn. The first page had a name, written in a script that leaned forward, chasing time. Below it, a second name, smaller, penned by a hand still learning where letters should go. He pressed his mouth into a line. The room's old clock coughed and kept breathing. "Who sent you here?" he asked, though he was staring at a place inside his own head now, not at her. "My mom," Leah said, and this time the word came out. She said if things got bad, if he came back, I should run. Run to the hill where the lights never go off. Give him the book. Tell him," her voice thinned. "Tell him he was wrong about her." He closed the diary. Not fast. Not slow. Just enough to make the air feel heavier. The guard shifted his weight. Somewhere in the house, a glass broke and people laughed, because that's what people do when they don't want to admit they're startled. The man looked at Leah again, not as a problem, but as a person who might carry a fuse. His jaw worked once. Twice. The edges of his control frayed so finely you could mistake them for thread. "Who else knows you're here?" he asked. "No one," Leah whispered. "I came alone." The door behind him opened without permission. A woman in a dress that cost what small cars cost stepped halfway in, a smile already loaded, her voice warm for guests and glacial for staff. Then she saw Leah. The smile faltered, then returned, manufactured this time. "We have donors in the..." The man didn't turn. "Not now." She blinked. The guard stared at the carpet. Leah felt the world tilt, just enough to notice the angle. The woman's gaze slid to the diary in his hand, then to Leah's face, and the calculation there, fast, sharp, practiced, made the room colder than winter could. "Who is this?" she asked, but the words weren't a question. They were a warning. He still didn't turn. He looked at Leah and, for a heartbeat that should have been impossible in a house like this, he looked afraid. "Close the door," he said. The woman hesitated. Then she did, the latch clicking like the closing of a mouth that has said too much. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was thick with things about to happen. Leah's lips moved. She didn't mean to speak, not yet, not like this. But the sentence had been waiting on her tongue ever since the rain started, ever since the gate refused to be church or judge. "Please," she said, barely louder than the fire. "Don't hurt us." The man's fingers tightened around the diary. The old clock coughed again. Somewhere far below, the city cracked thunder against the hill as if trying to be heard. He opened his mouth, and the future leaned forward to listen. The room seemed smaller now that she was inside it, like the walls had drawn breath and decided to keep some of the air for themselves. Leah stood very still, damp sweater clinging to her spine, watching the man with the winter-colored eyes stare at the diary as if it were a match lit too close to old curtains. The fire snapped in the grate, a polite sound, as if it didn't want to interrupt what the house had been waiting years to hear. The inner door opened again, not with hesitation this time but with choreography, and the woman in the dress returned as if the room belonged to her reflection. A string of pearls lay across her collarbones like a line of frost. Her smile was precise, a blade wrapped in velvet. Security said there was a disturbance at the gate, she began, already walking, already measuring. The sentence died when her gaze landed on Leah's shoes, the wet squeak kind that leave little moons on polished floors. That, she said, tilting her chin toward the child, is not coming any farther into my house. The man didn't glance at her. He set the diary on the table with a care that made Leah's throat knot. Close the door, he repeated, and this time the words had the weight of habit, the way you speak when you expect obedience. She did close it, but she didn't go quietly. She crossed to the far side of the room and took position near the fire, as if warmth belonged to her by contract. If you insist on entertaining charity cases during a fundraiser, she said lightly, at least keep the spectacle where the donors can admire your generosity. Leah felt heat travel up her neck, not from the fire but from the way the woman's eyes stripped her down to something less than person, something to be catalogued and escorted away. She hugged her elbows, fingers sticky with rain, and tried to shrink without moving, the way you do when you're a guest in an argument that isn't safe. She brought this, the man said. He didn't touch the diary again, he didn't need to. The room already felt rearranged around it. She says her mother sent her. The woman's laugh was soft, dry. They always say that. My mother? My aunt. A cousin who used to work in the kitchen. There's a script. This isn't the script, the guard murmured from the doorway. He wasn't supposed to add lines, but something about the little book had put a crack in the stage. The woman ignored him. She stepped closer to Leah, not close enough to touch, touch would be too human, but close enough to weigh. Perfume moved with her, a winter flower with a bite. What's your name? She asked, the false sweetness slipping into place like a glove. Leah, the girl said, and it felt strange, saying the truth in a room built to store other people's versions of it. And who told you to come here, Leah? My mom. Your mother, the woman repeated, tasting the word as if checking it for poison. And what, exactly, is your mother hoping to get out of this visit? Leah pushed her fist deeper into the wool of her cardigan so it wouldn't shake. She's not hoping for anything. She's gone. The last word slid out without permission and sat between them like something fragile and glass. Leah inhaled. She said if he, a flick of her eyes toward the man, quick as a bird, ever came back and made things worse, I should run up to the hill where the lights don't go out and give him the book. The woman looked at the diary with a laugh that was almost a cough. A diary? Of course. The prop department has range. She turned to the man. We've been down some version of this road before, haven't we, Gabriel? Leah stiffened. A name. It felt dangerous to have it now that it was real. He didn't correct her. He didn't correct anything. Not like this, he said. The woman's eyebrow lifted, a gesture that meant, and now we rehearse the part where you feel guilty. How many phone calls have we fielded over the years? How many little performances at the gate? You hand out envelopes to dodge a headline, and they scurry. Or, she smiled at Leah without warmth, they come back older, with lawyers. Enough, the man said, not loudly, but the old clock seemed to hold its tick for a beat. The woman took a slow breath and then let it out, turning her attention back to the child. You can leave the trinket, she said, nodding at the diary, and we'll make sure it gets to the right people. It's not a trinket, Leah whispered. She swallowed and angled her body so that one shoulder pointed at the table, as if willing the diary to be heavy enough not to move. It's proof. Proof of what? Leah felt the room press on her from both sides, the man heavy with storms he kept inside, The woman sharp enough to cut a smaller person clean through. Of him being wrong, she said. About my mom. The woman's eyes cooled another degree. What exactly are you implying? The pearls at her throat rose and fell, counting her patience. I'm not implying, Leah murmured. I'm telling. The woman laughed again, a line of glass breaking somewhere out of sight. Security, she said without turning, call the driver. Back entrance. I don't want the guests. No, the man's hand lifted like a barrier, and the command in it was old, older than the marriage, older than any foundation under their feet. No cars. No back entrance. The guard hesitated, then folded his hands behind him, the way you do when you're relieved not to carry out an order that would have felt wrong in your bones. The woman stared at the man, at the hand that had stopped the room. You cannot be serious, she said, soft with astonishment. You are not going to reward this play. He finally looked at her. There are names in that book. His voice had lowered, and Leah couldn't tell if it was to keep the walls from hearing or to keep his heart from escaping his mouth. Places. Dates. He glanced at Leah. Things no one else would know. The woman's smile dropped its last pretense. We'll see how much no one else knows when counsel has a look, she said. If this is extortion, I will have charges filed. If it's a misunderstanding, I'll have it buried. Either way, I will not have a wet child dragged into the middle of this house like a ghost from your 20s. Leah flinched at the word dragged, even though no one had touched her. She stared at the carpet, at the geometry of it, how every line knew where it was supposed to lead. I'm not a ghost, she said. I'm right here. The man rubbed his thumb against the bridge of his nose, a weariness passing over him that made him look human instead of inevitable. He set the diary down again, fingers lingering. What did your mother tell you about me? He asked without looking up. That you were brave, Leah said, and felt the surprise ripple through the air like heat. And that you were wrong. The woman gave the kind of smile that people wear in court. Charming, she said. Tell me, Leah, did your mother also tell you how much bravery money can buy? Or how often men in this city are accused of fathering strangers to pry open safes with sob stories? Leah shook her head. She wished the cardigan were bigger. She wished the rain would scrub her clean of how small she felt. She told me to run, she said, and not stop until the lights didn't go out. The woman's eyes flicked to the man. Poetry. How quaint. Enough, the guard said, more to the room than to either of them. The woman turned, slower this time, and shaped her voice into sugar that had learned to bite. Let me be clear, she said to Leah. If you say another word in front of my guests, if you step 1 inch toward the main hall, I will have you removed. If you persist, I will call the police. And if a single photograph of you in this house appears anywhere, I will ensure the agency representing you, because there's always an agency, wishes it had never heard your name. Do you understand? Leah's mouth went dry. Her hand floated up before she could stop it, as if to shield the diary from the temperature in the woman's tone. I'm not here to embarrass anyone, she said, and though her voice shook, the sentence made a small circle of courage on the floor where she stood. I'm here because I didn't know where else to go. The man straightened, as if the floor under his feet had tilted and he'd decided not to fall. You won't call anyone, he told the woman, and the way he said it turned the room back into something the house recognized, his. Silence spread, thin as ice and twice as treacherous. The woman regarded him as if re-evaluating the balance sheet. If you insist on indulging this, do it upstairs. In private. And for God's sake, make it quick. He nodded once. Backstairs, he said to the guard. And towels. Then to Leah, bring the book. The woman's mouth tightened. She stepped aside, but not without leaving something in the air that would sting later. As Leah moved to the table, the woman reached out faster than a thought and pinched a corner of the diary with 2 fingers, as if it were contaminated. Let's see this famous proof, she said, flipping it open to a random page. She didn't have to read far. Her pupils cooled as they tracked the lines, a date aligned with a night Leah had only ever known through her mother's soft, hard voice. A location that didn't appear in news articles because the news had been invited in through a different door, a detail so small, so domestic, so unglamorous, that only people who had been inside the moment would remember it. The woman closed the diary and handed it back without looking at Leah. Upstairs, she said tightly. No. They moved. The guard led, a shadow with keys. The man followed, the gravity around him pulling the hallway straight. Leah came last, the diary pressed to her chest, her steps leaving small, dark ovals that the house would soon pretend had never been there. The back staircase was narrow, unprepared for guests and their expectations. It smelled faintly of lemon oil and old arguments. As they climbed, voices from the party drifted up, music swelling, champagne personalities laughing, the clatter of plates and performance. None of that could follow them here. Here the air was different, thinner, a corridor between 2 pieces of a life. A door opened onto a room that wasn't on tours, no staged flowers, no curated books. Just a desk with honest mess, a window black with rain, and a framed photograph turned face down on the credenza like a secret taking a nap. The man closed the door and took the diary from Leah. He didn't sit. He stood by the lamp and read. Each page turned like a clock hand. The house quieted around them, as if drawing closer to listen. The guard stepped back to the wall, eyes on the carpet, trying not to exist. Leah stared at the edges of the room, the part of the city visible through the glass, the shadow of the lampshade, the outline of the man's shoulder, and tried to hold still enough to hear if her mother's voice was somewhere inside the paper. She could feel the woman downstairs in every board of the floor, a pressure, a threat, a calculation ticking. At the 4th page, the man's fingers stopped. The breath he let out was not a sigh, it was a surrender to something he could no longer outrun. When he lifted his head, the winter in his eyes had cracked. Not melted, cracked, as if light had forced its way through ice and found water underneath. He looked at Leah the way people look at the edge of a map they thought was finished. "Who told you the gate code from that night?" he asked quietly. Leah swallowed. "No one," she said. "I wasn't born yet." She glanced at the book. She wrote it down so I'd know she wasn't lying. She said truth doesn't always feel good, so you have to give it numbers. A sound came from the hallway, heels on wood, decisive, the kind that never have to ask permission. The handle turned. The door pressed inward an inch before the lock resisted with a small, stubborn click. The woman's voice floated through the seam, smooth and cold. "Gabriel," she said. "Donors are asking for you." No one answered. In the pause, you could hear the rain whispering against the window like someone practicing a confession. "We're not finished," the woman said. "And if you keep a child in that room alone with you, you will be." Her footsteps receded, the threat of them hanging like perfume. The man set the diary down. His hands were steady now, but something in the room wasn't. Leah felt it, the way you feel a train before you hear it. He looked at her, not a judge anymore, not a legend in a magazine frame, but a man who had misplaced a piece of his life and found it in a stranger's hands. "Nothing else happens downstairs tonight," he said, and there was no law in the city that could have contradicted him in that moment. "No one speaks to you without me. No one touches you." He reached for the phone on the desk, then stopped with his hand over it, as if remembering how loud certain decisions sound. "We're going to get answers," he said. From the far end of the hall, the party roared, glasses chiming, laughter cresting, like a storm that didn't know about the other one unfolding under the same roof. The storm outside had not relented. Rain lashed the windows in crooked veins, thunder rumbling low like a giant clearing its throat. Inside the study, the air felt even heavier, close, tense, as though the walls themselves were waiting for the next sentence. Leah clutched the diary against her chest while Gabriel stood by the lamp, his back straight but his eyes betraying something rare: hesitation. The guard lingered near the door, arms folded, gaze fixed on a knot in the wood floor. He had been present at more hushed confrontations than he cared to count, but this one felt different. He could feel it in the way his employer's breathing had changed, slower, deeper, carrying a weight he couldn't file away as business. "Open it," Gabriel said finally. His voice wasn't a command this time, it was something raw, almost a request. Leah loosened her grip on the diary, hands trembling, and laid it open on the desk. Pages curled from the dampness of the storm. The ink was smudged in places where her mother's tears, or her own, had bled through. She turned carefully until she found the page she had memorized, the one she had always known would matter most. "There," she whispered, pointing to a date. "That's when you came back." Gabriel leaned closer. His hand hovered above the page before settling on the edge, fingers brushing the paper as though it might crumble. His eyes scanned the handwriting, slanted, hurried, with loops that grew more erratic toward the end. "He came back tonight. Said it was dangerous for me to stay, but love doesn't leave bruises, it only leaves questions. If anything happens, I'll leave this for her. One day she'll read it and know who he really was." The words clawed at Gabriel's chest. He remembered that night. The argument. The fear that made him say cruel things in the name of protection. He had left before dawn, certain he was doing the right thing. He had convinced himself the silence afterward was final. He closed his eyes, the memory pressing against him like an old wound reopened. "She kept this." Leah nodded, chin trembling. "She said the world would never believe her. That one day, only this book could prove she wasn't lying." The guard cleared his throat, a subtle reminder that he was still in the room. "Sir, if these notes are true, then..." "Then I failed," Gabriel cut in, sharper than intended. He straightened, pushing the diary away as if distance could protect him from the truth bleeding through its pages. At that moment, the door rattled. A knock, quick, clipped, and then the handle turning. The lock held, but the voice that followed was unmistakable. "Gabriel," the woman called, calm but venom threading beneath the syllables. "You cannot hide her forever. Do you realize how this looks?" He didn't answer. He simply placed one hand flat against the desk, grounding himself. Leah's heart raced. The pearls. The perfume. The ice behind the smile. She could almost feel the woman's presence through the wood, like a shadow pressing in. The woman's tone sharpened. "Don't be a fool. She's playing you. Children lie. Mothers lie." This, a pause, as if her finger traced the diary from memory, is a story crafted to wound you. Don't let it. Gabriel exhaled through his nose, then looked at Leah. "Is that true?" Leah shook her head so quickly tears flung from her lashes. I don't even know how to lie about this. It's all I have. She slid a small envelope from the diary's pocket. The paper was brittle, yellowed at the edges. She told me to give you this if I ever found you. Gabriel hesitated before taking it. His hands, used to contracts worth millions, trembled now as he unfolded a single page. The handwriting was firmer here, deliberate, as if her mother had pressed each word into permanence. Gabriel, if she finds you, it's because I couldn't protect her anymore. Don't punish her for my silence. She deserves more than the life I left her. And if you doubt she's yours, look into her eyes. They will answer for me. The paper sagged in his hands. His throat closed, but the answer was already in front of him. Leah's eyes, clear, unwavering despite the storm, mirrored his own. It was like staring into a reflection he hadn't realized was missing. The knock came again, harder this time. Enough games, the woman hissed. You're humiliating yourself. End this. Gabriel folded the letter with care, sliding it back into its envelope. He met Leah's gaze, and for the first time his voice carried no armor, no rehearsed authority. I don't need a test, he said softly. I believe you. The guard shifted, stunned by the admission. Leah's lips parted, disbelief and relief crashing through her like twin tides. She wanted to run, to collapse, to finally exhale, but the door banged once more, and the woman's voice lashed through the crack. If you open that door with her still inside, Gabriel, you will lose everything. Gabriel's jaw tightened. His hand settled protectively on the diary, as though it were no longer paper but a shield. He looked at Leah again, and this time his words were steady, a vow forming in the hush between thunder. Then maybe everything I thought I had wasn't worth keeping. The room fell silent except for the storm, and for the first time, Leah felt less like an intruder in the house and more like someone it could no longer deny. The lock turned with a metallic sigh that sounded too human. Gabriel didn't open the door, he stood with his palm flat on the desk, the diary beneath it like a living thing. Leah stayed near the lamp, a small constellation of damp wool and trembling breath. The guard hovered by the jamb, earpiece silent, instinct loud. On the other side, the party pressed closer. Laughter rose and fell. Strings traced a melody that had never meant anything to people who couldn't afford to pretend. Somewhere down the corridor, a waiter apologized to a centerpiece. The house, after years of being paid to keep its promises, seemed to wait for a different kind of truth. Gabriel moved first. He lifted the diary, slid it into the inside pocket of his jacket with the care of a man holstering a story, and crossed to the door. When he unlocked it, the woman didn't rush in, she flowed, perfume first, pearls second, smile last. Her eyes scanned the room and landed on Leah with the trained precision of a sniper relocating a target. This game ends now, she said. No velvet this time. No audience to seduce, only a threat to eliminate. It isn't a game, Gabriel replied. Calm, almost gentle. But the calm came from places in him that storms had already tested. The woman's gaze ticked to the bulge the diary made under his lapel and back. Of course it is. You just prefer stories where you get to be the hero. The guard stiffened as footsteps approached behind her. Two board members, men in dinner jackets with faces polished by prosperity, hovered, their curiosity barely leashed by manners. The woman turned, making her voice musical again. Gabriel's handling a minor situation. Give us 5. They retreated the length of a carpet pattern, not far enough to miss anything important. Gabriel stepped aside so that Leah stood in clear view. Her name is Leah, he said, as if introducing a fact the house would need later when it wrote its memoir. She's staying. The woman laughed once, disbelief wrapped around fury. In this house? She swept a hand at the walls, the crown molding, the rain-streaked window. With my guests downstairs? With a fundraiser on the wire service feeds? Are you out of your mind, or only out of shame? Leah shrank back, a reflex, but her hands didn't let go of what she'd carried all this way, the small plastic bag with knots toughened by rain and fear. She put it gently on the desk and undid the knot. The guard watched her do it, and for a moment the room understood reverence. There's more, she said softly. The diary had been the first key, this felt like the second. From a folded square of cloth she lifted a pendant, no chain, just the charm, oval, age-darkened. The metal rubbed smooth where fingers had memorized it. At the center, under scratched glass, a small pressed forget-me-not. It used to be on a necklace, she whispered. Mom wore it when she couldn't afford luck. Gabriel blinked, and whatever mask he had left slipped another rung. The woman did not blink, she tilted her head the way you do when you're bored of obvious props. Trinkets, she said. Found in a flea market, staged for effect. You think sentiment can be notarized? Leah set the pendant down and pulled one last item from the cloth, a hospital bracelet cut and kept, its plastic cloudy with time. The letters had been inked over twice, the way people do when they're afraid of memory fading. Gr. Authorized visitor. Maternity, 6th floor. The date was the same as the one Leah had shown in the diary. The guard's hand went to his pocket, then stopped. You don't photograph a confession while it's still choosing you. Enough, the woman said, but the word didn't carry like it had downstairs. Up here, proof wasn't afraid to look ordinary. Gabriel didn't reach for the bracelet. He didn't have to. He had the face you wear when someone opens a door into the room where you keep the thing you swore you'd closed forever. He spoke without looking away from Leah. You were right, he said, quiet, to the past, to the woman in the photo turned face down on the credenza, to the man who had walked away before dawn and told himself that was what courage looked like. You were right and I was wrong. The woman moved closer, pearls catching the lamplight like a warning. Say that again, she murmured, but to the lawyers. To the board. To the press that will happily turn this house into a morality play. She flicked a glance at Leah, a surgical strike. To the child whose existence will be reduced to a headline, rich man's mistake knocks during gala. You think you are saving her? You are setting her on fire. The words landed like hail. Leah's shoulders dipped, then squared. She opened the diary to a page she had never had the courage to read aloud and found that courage anyway. He told me it was safer if we never called him again, she read, voice steadying as it moved. But if something happens, I want our daughter to know that fear is not love, silence is not safety, and doors that stay lit at night still owe the dark an answer. No one moved. The storm at the window seemed to hold its breath. From the hallway, one of the board men coughed a question he didn't know how to ask. The woman turned on him with a smile that closed like a trap. All handled, she sang. Enjoy the auction. Gabriel stepped forward, not to the woman, not to the men, but to the boundary between private and public that the door embodied. He pulled it wider and spoke into the corridor, not loud, just unmistakable. The event is over, he said. Thank you for coming. It said something about power that no one argued. It said more about the man that he didn't check to see who obeyed. The music unspooled into a confused silence. Then the house grew busy with the sound of people pretending they were always on their way out. The woman's smile vanished so cleanly it was as if it had never been installed. "You have lost your mind," she breathed. "Do you understand what you've just done to our name?" "Our name," he repeated, and the word tasted different now that it had more than one inheritance. He looked at Leah. "Which name do you carry?" She opened her mouth. Closed it. Names were dangerous. Names were keys. She glanced at the bracelet, at the letters that weren't hers and were, and then she lifted her chin. "The one my mother gave me," she said. "Until someone tells me a truer one." The room received that sentence and found there was nothing impolite in it. The guard, who had seen men coat their guilt in philanthropy, stared at the floor so no one would catch him agreeing. "We're done." The woman straightened, smoothing her dress into a weapon. "Driver's bringing the car around. You will come downstairs, make a toast, and apologize." "No," Gabriel said. Her eyes narrowed. "To me." "No," he said again, and the word felt like the first honest thing he'd said in a decade of dinners. "You would choose this over us?" She pointed at Leah as if pointing at a stain. "Over the years I have given you? Over the rooms I've filled, the deals I've hosted, the causes I've laundered for you with floral centerpieces and press releases?" He didn't flinch. "I would choose the truth over the performance," he said. "And the child over the chandelier." A thin, involuntary laugh escaped the woman, the kind that leaks when composure springs a hairline crack. "Fine," she snapped. "Then we do it properly. Tomorrow we take a test, and when it exonerates you, I will expect a public statement about predatory grifters and a donation in my name to the shelter she should have gone to." Gabriel nodded once, and for a second relief softened the woman's mouth, until he finished. "We'll take the test," he said, "for the record. Not for my belief. That I already have." Silence rearranged itself around the sentence. The guard looked up. Leah did not breathe. The woman absorbed it like a blow and translated it into strategy. "You're making a mistake you can't afford," she warned. "And when the brokers, the board, the foundations call, when they ask if the man they backed is still the man they bought, I will not be the one to reassure them." "Then don't," he said. Something final moved behind her eyes. "Choose, then," she whispered. "Right now. Me, or the story in your pocket." He didn't look at his pocket. He looked at Leah, at the small human fact of her in a room that had devoured truths more expensive than this and called it dinner. He lifted a hand and pressed the intercom button by the door. "Teresa," he said to the housekeeper who had taught him what decency looked like before he could afford it. "Prepare the blue room. Fresh linens. And a tray, soup, bread, tea with honey. She's a guest." The speaker crackled, surprised and tender at once. "Yes, senor," the voice said, and the house bent a new way. The woman's mouth shaped words that would not serve her here. She pivoted to the guard as if brute force could replace eroded leverage. "Escort her out," she ordered, each syllable honed. "No." He didn't move. "Mr. Reyes," he asked, eyes on the man he actually worked for. Gabriel's answer was uncomplicated. "No one puts a hand on her. If anyone tries, they won't work on this hill again." The hallway delivered the last of the guests to the courtroom and then fell into the intimate noises houses make when they're relieved of witnesses. The woman stared at the two of them as if trying to memorize betrayal for use in later attacks. "You will regret this," she said at last, so softly the threat hid in the vowels. "Maybe," Gabriel allowed. "But not tonight." She took a breath that rearranged her bones, as if fitting herself into a new armor. "Council will call at 9, she said, and left, heels stitching fury down the corridor. They stood in the wake of her exit, the storm outside and the quiet inside learning to harmonize. The guard exhaled, the sound of a man who had unclenched a life. "I'll make sure the upstairs hall stays clear," he said, and slipped out. Gabriel turned back to Leah. Up close he seemed taller, but not because he took more space, because he gave it back. "The blue room has a window that looks over the city," he said, as if describing a map she could own. "You can see where the lights don't go out." Her throat tightened. She looked down at the bracelet, at the pendant, at the diary that had stopped being paper and started being a bridge. "Am I safe here?" she asked, and the word safe was small and enormous. "Yes," he said, and nothing in him left room for doubt. "You're safe." The door opened again, softer this time. Teresa stood there with a stack of towels and eyes that knew too much about the difference between wealth and warmth. She took in the scene, wet child, broken party, man learning, and smiled in the way only people who have waited a long time for a decent decision smile. "Come, Querida," she said to Leah. "Let's get you dry." Leah gathered the pendant and the bracelet and, after a glance at Gabriel that returned something like gravity to her body, followed the housekeeper toward a hallway the party had never needed. The blue room would smell of lavender and linen. The sheets would be crisp. The window would frame a city that kept its promises to light if not to people. Behind her, the man she had found pressed his hand to his pocket and felt the outline of a book that still burned. Downstairs, in the emptied rooms, flowers leaned toward the door as if listening, and in the rain the gate remembered a small fist and decided not to forget. Tomorrow could bring tests and headlines and lawyers with teeth. Tonight had brought something else. The house stood very still, as if committing the moment to memory, the night it learned a new name and kept it. The rain had thinned by dawn, leaving the city washed but still shivering. From the blue room's window, Leah could see the streets winding below, the lamps still glowing against the pale morning. She pressed her forehead to the glass, the warmth of fresh linen at her back, the taste of bread and honey lingering on her tongue. For the first time in a long time, her stomach didn't ache from emptiness. Behind her, the diary lay open on the nightstand, drying slowly, its pages curling like leaves after a storm. The pendant rested beside it, and the hospital bracelet had been placed on top, as if together they were pieces of a puzzle finally allowed to touch. There was a knock, gentle, nothing like the sharpness from the night before. Teresa peeked in, her smile softer than light. "He wants to see you," she said. "He's waiting downstairs." Leah's heart skipped. For a moment she thought about refusing, about hiding in this room where kindness had finally found her. But then she remembered her mother's words, "Run to the hill where the lights never go out." She had run. Now she had to stand. She followed Teresa down the back staircase, the one that didn't echo with music or guests. The corridors smelled of polish and early morning coffee. When they reached the main hall, the chandelier above was still dimmed, its crystals catching the weak light like frozen rain. The house felt empty now, no laughter, no applause, no masks. Gabriel stood near the great doors, a tall silhouette against the gray morning. His jacket was gone, his shirt sleeves rolled to his elbows. He looked less like the man in magazine covers and more like someone unfinished, but real. In his hands, he held the diary again, open to the page that had broken the silence of his past. "You wrote those words," he said when she approached, tapping the line where her childish handwriting had shared space with her mother's. Leah nodded, eyes fixed on the ink that carried both voices. She made me practice, so you'd know it was me too. She said one day it might save us. He closed the diary and placed it gently on a table. Then he crouched so he wasn't towering above her anymore. Last night I told myself I believed you. This morning I don't have to tell myself anything. I just do. Leah blinked fast, the tears threatening to undo her courage. Does that mean I can stay? He studied her face, the same eyes, the same quiet defiance he'd once fallen in love with, now staring back at him through a child. His voice cracked when he answered, but the words were steady. It means you are home. From now on, no one will hurt you. Not while I can breathe. The echo of heels cut across the marble. The woman appeared at the top of the staircase, her presence still commanding even after a sleepless night. She didn't look at Leah, she looked only at Gabriel. So this is your choice, she said flatly. Gabriel rose, still shielding Leah with his body though he didn't need to. It isn't a choice, he replied. It's the truth. One I should have faced years ago. The woman's smile was brittle glass. Then face the ruin that comes with it. She turned, each step sharp, each pearl a bead of war. The house swallowed her figure, and with it went the weight of performance. Silence returned, broken only by the sound of rain dripping from the gutters outside. Gabriel looked down at Leah again, his expression softer now. He extended his hand, not as a command, but as an invitation. She hesitated, then placed her small fingers in his. His hand closed gently, firmly, as if promising not just to hold but to anchor. They walked together through the hall, past the portraits of men shaking hands and women posing beside checkbooks. The housekeeper watched from the shadows, her smile quiet, her eyes bright. At the doors, Gabriel paused. He looked out at the city below, the hill where the lights never went out. Then he looked down at Leah and spoke the words she would remember every time fear tried to return. Never again, he said. Never again will you be alone. Leah leaned against him, the pendant warm in her palm, the diary pressed against her chest. For the first time, the house didn't feel like a fortress against her, it felt like walls learning to protect instead of exclude. Outside, the storm had broken, and though the sky was still heavy, a line of light cracked the horizon. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe to Cryspire, leave your like, and share this video. Every child deserves to be heard, and with your support, we can keep telling stories that matter.